Hello, welcome back. This is Jeff Byers, and this is Andy 150, and we are working on Module 5, where we're going to be doing the food can, low poly and high poly. Now, before we start that, though, I want to do our exercises, which is low poly to adding edge loops, to high poly, which is hard surface modeling, adding details, and then taking those details and adding them to our low poly. So let's go ahead and get started. What we want to do is go ahead and create a cube. Now you're going to see something different than what I have. I've got my viewport grid off, so let's turn that on. Okay, so we're going to go in and create a cube. We're going to scale that cube 20 by 20. So I'm going to hold down the mouse and just kind of move down over the scale and let go at the bottom, and then just type in 20 and then hit enter, and that does 20 for all three axes. Okay, so we just want this cube to be bigger to be able to show it a little bit better, so it's not so small. We're working in centimeters, so we kind of have to be mindful of that as well. So let's go ahead and just scale that up. Normally I don't scale things up until I'm finished, but I'm just going to scale this up. And don't let this confuse you. I just want you to be able to scale things, be able to work with scale. So just kind of taking that. And now we're going to go ahead and duplicate this over. So we're going to have three pieces that we're going to be working with. The low poly with the edge loops to create the detail for the high poly. So I'm going to go in here and do a Control D for duplicate, and I'm going to move that over to this side. Okay, doesn't have to be perfect or anything like that. And then I'm going to then I have two of them. So this is going to be our basically our duplicate, but it's going to be our low poly, and the one we were working with is going to be our medium poly. Okay. Well, medium poly isn't what it sounds because it's just going to be edge loops added. All right, so if I click on this and I were to go in and smooth it, it would collapse on itself because there's no edge loops that are controlling these edges. Okay, so if I hit the 3 key, it just turns into a round ball. Okay, all right, and that's not what we want it to do. All right, so I'm going to hit the 1 key again. So we're going to be working between 1 and 3. Okay. Now 3 is just a smooth preview. It's different than actually smoothing the object. Okay, you need to understand that. So in viewport, Maya allows us to smooth it, I believe, at 1 or 2. Anyway, let's take a look. So if I were to duplicate this over again, okay, you can just watch this. You don't have to do this. Control D. Okay. This is just a demonstration. So if I hit the 3 key here, okay, and if I click on the box and actually smooth it, I'm going to go to Mesh and then Smooth. And if I do it to 1, then I can click Smooth. Okay. Now it looks like this has been smoothed to 2. Okay. So I'm assuming that Maya is now set to smooth preview at 2. So if I Control Z back, okay, and I do this again and Mesh Smooth, and I go to 2 and hit enter, okay, and then click Smooth, then they look exactly the same. If I click off, you can see that they look very similar. So Maya is giving you a smooth preview of 2. Okay, with that said, now you know what the smooth preview is. I'm going to click on 1 for that. Now, I can go back and undo, but since this is just a demonstration, okay, of what smoothing is and what smooth preview is, just a preview, okay, it doesn't really smooth the object, okay. So if you if you save this as a smooth preview and you try to texture it or do anything like that, it will only see it as that, as a cube, okay, not as a smooth preview. Okay, when you smooth it, it solidifies the model into a smooth object. Okay, that's hard surface modeling. Okay, so I'm going to click delete on that one. Okay. I'm going to go back to 1 on this. All right. So how do we keep the box from collapsing on itself? Well, we have to add edge loops. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hold the Shift key and right mouse button click over the object and go to Insert Edge Loop tool. If you want a really sharp edge, you would have the edge loop very close. If you want a softer edge, you would go farther over. So let me give you an example of that really quick. So if I have it close together, okay, and I create those edge loops, and it's really important that we space them evenly, like that. Now when I hit the 3 key, the reason why it does this, it looks like this, is because it puts it into cage mode, which shows us the cage, the original cage, and what the object would look like inside the cage, which is helpful sometimes. So that's number 2. Number 3, if you hit Q and go into selection mode, then we get to see what that edge really looks like, and then I can click off and you can see that edge is tighter than it was. So it's holding itself together because of those edge loops. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 1 and then go Control Z and then Control Z back. And even if I couldn't Control Z back, I can move these edge loops by hitting the Y key or W key and moving it back, and then double clicking on this one, moving it this way, you see, and double click on this one and moving it down, and we can create a softer edge here. All right, so there's several ways, and you can move things, you can move edge loops pretty easily by doing the process I just showed you. Okay, so I hit the 3 key now. Let's go back into object mode. There we go. So now you can see that the edge is a lot softer. So depending on the type of model that you're creating, you either want a really sharp edge or you want a really soft edge, or in between. And the only way to know that is through experience, and looking at your reference. So if you need a sharper edge, then you bring the edges closer together. If you need a softer edge, then you need to separate those edges. So I'm going to click on the object, hit the 1 key again, get back in object mode. In this instance, I'm going to go ahead and keep the edge loops somewhat tight together. And consistency is really important here. And the spacing is really important here. And that's all dependent on the object you're actually trying to create. So if I was going to create a dice, those edges are a little bit sharper, aren't they? So this is what I'm going to look at. So I'm going to go ahead and add edge loops now, continue around the whole cube. You can and I would just start on the top, go all the way around, and then go to the bottom, and then go all the way around. So I'm just going to follow that. It's just easier. So I'm going to hold down the Shift key, right mouse button, and insert edge loop. And you will get more and more comfortable with this as we go along. Just rotate around, add an edge loop over here, and the top is done. Now we go to the bottom. Okay, you can see that we've already got edge loops here, so all we have to do is focus on the edge loop here. Okay. And so the bottom was a lot easier to do because I had done all that work on the top. All right, so I'm going to hit the Q key, right mouse, and click on Select Tool. And now we get to see our final, what it looks like when we hit the 3 key. Okay, click off, and that's kind of what we're going to, you can see that's what's going to happen to the object. Now notice it lost some volume. It lost a little bit of volume, and how can we check that? We can hit the 4 key on the side view, and we lost a little volume, the differences between the two. Let's see if I can get both showing here. Selection mode, let's go into object mode up here and see if I can select both of them. Yeah, it looks like they're both on. You'll notice that, and it's hard to see up here, but the corner is a little bit different, isn't it? It's smoothed out because it's smooth between that edge and this edge right here. So you can see how it all works, okay? It's really kind of cool. And this is a really great way when you're talking about hard surface modeling. This is exactly what they're talking about. You start with a lower poly, add edge loops, and then you continue through that process. So the next process, let's go hit the 1 key on here to get it back. The next process is then to go ahead and solidify that object as a hard surface, which is a high poly. So because the smooth preview we can't use, it doesn't really work with anything. So what we're going to do is do Control D. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that over like that. Okay, and then I'm going to smooth this. So I'm going to go to Mesh, and we're going to go to Smooth. Okay, and we're going to do levels of 2. Okay, there we go. And when we're all done, we click off and we go in here into selection mode and make sure we're in object mode up here under the main menu bar, and shift select each one of those and do a delete by type history. And we're not going to freeze transformations because we want to be able to move everything back to where in the center. We'll do that later. Okay, so right now we have a low poly, we have an object with edge loops, and we have the completed high poly hard surface model. So low poly hard surface model or high poly. So those are the two that we're going to be working with, okay? Because we want to take this information that we've added to this edge. Now, when we talk about detail, in its simplest form, it could be considered just the edge that we want to bake onto this low poly to make it look more appealing, okay? And that's what you're looking for when you're doing modeling for games, let's say, and you're baking the high poly map onto the low poly map, okay? So this is essential in gaming, that you get that edge detail, because you can see that the light is reflecting off that edge, and the light is not reflecting off this edge, and that's a really that's a powerful, appealing aspect to making things look realistic. Because in real life, light always reflects off of an edge, no matter how sharp it is, okay? Even a razor blade under a magnifying glass is not a perfect point. I mean, it has a rounded edge if you get close enough to it. So that means that light will reflect off that small microscopic edge, okay? Something that you can't actually see, okay? So sharp it will cut you, okay? So the thing is with this, in CG, you got to understand that this is not real life, meaning CG, of course, you know that, but CG, to make something look realistic, it has to have reflection on the edges. It can't be infinite. So we're talking about infinitely sharp. That's what these edges are. They're infinitely sharp, and that in a real environment, that does not happen. So we have to keep that under consideration. So you'll be turning in this scene here with edge loops on, okay? You'll be taking screenshots of this for me so I can kind of get an idea. So you'll take a screenshot of this from the right side, excuse me, from the left side, and then from the right side, okay? And turning that in. That's going to be your exercise 1, okay? So do screenshots of both perspective this way and perspective that way. That lets me know that you did it. Okay, we're going to go on to the next one. So that will be part 3, and I'll see you in the next hard surface modeling video.